to Ship of the Week. This week's ship is the Japanese Pacific Express liner Tenyo Maru. In the early years of the 20th century, Japan was a rapidly industrializing, aspiring world power. And as it turns out, one of the things world powers seemed to do in those days was set about building ocean liners to embody their engineering and socio-political might. So, in 1907, the Mitsubishi Company was contracted to build a trio of liners that, while not necessarily record-breaking, could compete with those operated by European-based shipping firms. Laid down at Nagasaki, Tenyo Maru was launched in 1908. She displaced around 21,000 tons and stretched 575 feet in length. Like many contemporary warships and some of the newer Atlantic liners, Mitsubishi installed Parsons steam turbines aboard Tenyo Maru, which could propel the new ship ahead a shave over 20 knots in good conditions. A unit similar to hers is pictured here from the British cargo ship SS Vespasian, which, while a somewhat older ship, had recently received her Parsons propulsion system in a refit. Tenyo Maru entered service in 1909 for the Oriental Steamship Company, a Tokyo-based steamship line operating immigrant service to the United States via San Francisco. Indeed, it seems as though Tenyo Maru and her two sisters, Chiyo Maru and Shinyo Maru, were some of the earliest turbine liners on the Pacific. Their size, speed, and comfort made them a popular choice for both east and westbound travelers, and Tenyo Maru carried out rather uneventful service for much of her career. An incident over a decade after entering service in 1921 required a significant delay and quarantine of the ship during a short domestic voyage in Japan, over the course of which a passenger developed the symptoms of bubonic plague, the same disease that spent a considerable amount of the 14th century killing tens of millions across Europe. The patient died aboard ship. A few years later, in 1924, the United States, partly in an effort to appease growing isolationism, passed an immigration act that imposed annual quotas on immigrants arriving from a whole host of nations around the world. Japan was allocated 100 slots, drastically reducing the number of Japanese who could sail eastward for a new life. The legislation rapidly began to impact the Oriental Steamship Company's bookings, but it was not an immediate death blow to their Pacific service. It did, however, exacerbate the steadily declining relations between the United States and Japan. There were attempts to push back the gathering storm clouds, however, including the exchange of friendship dolls between the two nations. Japan's dolls, of which dozens were made, sailed to the United States in late 1927, one for each state in the Union and a handful of extras. With her passenger numbers falling, the line made the decision to retire Tenyo Maru, and she was sold for scrap in 1933.